Dawson's Rambles.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my video where I'm going to be ranking every MMPR return in the series. And this means it's a bit of a different ranking video. You know, it's not ranking traditional team-ups or anniversary team-ups like I did before. This is ranking every time we've had MMPR Rangers returning to the series, meaning whether it was an anniversary team-up, an unusual team-up, or a cameo appearance. Now, before we get started, does anyone want to get out? I do. Can I get out? Can you let me out here, sir? Just a couple honorable mentions, just in the sense that these were things that either I felt people would bring up, or I felt like, you know, they are returns in a way, but they're kind of hard to rank because they're so different. First of all being, I don't think anyone would count this since it's in the context of Dino Thunder, but Tommy is an MMPR character. But, you know, technically speaking, the Tommy character was in the SPD team-up, just as the voice of Jeffrey Perazzo, so it's obviously number one, because Jeffrey Perazzo's voice is my favorite version of Tommy. But again, the actor wasn't really there. I just thought I would mention it because of the technicality. The other two are Bulk and Spike / Bulk and Skull from Samurai, which the only reason I'm not ranking it is because it's different, because everything else on this list is Ranger related, and I didn't know where to put this. So I'll just give my thoughts in the sense that I can appreciate this for what it was. It was weird out of context, you know, Bulk and Skull's storylines overall are just weird. It's kind of funny the way they kind of wrap themselves around the current series theme and narrative, but it makes their story all over the place, and this raised so many questions, and I felt it was a de-evolution of their character, or more so Bulk's, because I felt as MMPR progressed, they got to sort of spread their wings a little bit and not just be slapstick humor, and I felt like they devolved like the rest of the show did. That being said, it was kind of nice as a longtime fan to see Bulk and Skull reunite at the end, to see Bulk in general. The dynamic between him and Spike was endearing at times, and you know, admittedly there was parts that made me chuckle in it. It's unfortunate that they felt like they were part of their own show. It almost felt like a web series that got pushed into the show. But you know, it could have been way better, but I can appreciate it for what it is in retrospect. The other thing to mention for honorable mentions is the returns cameos in Hyperforce. Again, kind of hard to rank because it's a very different format, but I have to say, first of all, really underrated how many people they got back for Hyperforce. Really cool stuff. And these cameos were mostly enjoyable. We got Karen Ashley twice, I believe. She was a lot of fun in the finale. I really liked moments like her riding in the Zord with Jack. I thought that was a cool Yellow Ranger team-up moment. And it was cool to see JDF play both a post-Dino Thunder Tommy and Lord Draken as they incorporated Hyperforce into the Shattered Grid event. So these were overall some cool little one-off cameos, but are difficult to rank in a more traditional sense. Now for the actual list, I just want to say that this is obviously an opinion list. No list like this is truly objective. With this list though, I did try to incorporate a bit of my opinion as well as what I think was more effective as an MMPR return. And as a result, I want to talk about the bottom two choices together because I think objectively one is a little bit better of an MMPR return, but I just personally prefer the other episode more. So at the bottom of the list is Grid Connection, followed immediately by Legendary Battle. Now, I think objectively, in some ways, Grid Connection is a better MMPR return because you have more MMPR stuff. You get to see the full team of suits there, teaming up with the other Dino teams. You get to see the Zords back, teaming up with the other Dino Zords, and you got Jason there. So there is more MMPR than Legendary Battle. But personally, I just don't like Grid Connection. It's one of my least favorite episodes of all time. It represents everything I hate about Toku crossovers, just put into PR now. Not that there isn't stuff I like about it, which I'll talk about in a second, but I just could not rank it above because I personally don't like it, even though I think it has more MMPR stuff than Legendary Battle. It's just so shallow and hollow and represents, like I said, so much of what I don't like. But again, if you aren't, like, jaded about that type of stuff, it was probably cool for you to see all the suits return and cool to see all the Megazords team up, and the Megazord footage from the Dino team up in Sentai admittedly looks a lot better than the CG stuff we recently got. The whole thing is too that Jason felt extremely off in this entire special. The only part I really liked was that line at the end where he said, you know, as long as there's Rangers like you, the world is in good hands, or something to that effect. But he didn't feel like Jason for the whole special. I don't know why they didn't let him keep the beard. Instead we got Rosie O'Donnell, but he just felt off. It just wasn't great for me, except for that one line and some superficial stuff that people will enjoy if they're into that. Now again, Legendary Battle, you know, isn't much better. I personally enjoy the episode for what it is, but in terms of MMPR content, it's basically just Tommy returning, and it felt like JDF Tommy. I've talked about this in the past, that I think post-Dino Thunder, all of Tommy's cameos and stuff felt like a little bit more of JDF's character in there, but at least he didn't feel off, you know, and it was cool to see him as the Green Ranger, leading this team of Legacy Rangers, sort of giving the seal of approval to the new Rangers, and the rescue scene with Saba was overall cool, and I just personally enjoyed this episode more than Grid Connection, even though, if objectively Grid Connection might be a better MMPR return. Alright, now we can list things more one at a time. Dimensions in Danger. Dimensions in Danger, honestly, is a pretty cool tribute to, this is going to sound repetitive if you've watched other videos where I've talked about it, but in regard to doing a tribute for MMPR, like I said, it gives it kind of a more of a tribute to the overall Zordon era in the sense that it pays, respect to the fact that Tommy took up so many different Ranger mantles. Getting to see him transform into all his different Rangers, getting to see the Falcon Zord was overall pretty cool. Of course, you also have like Rocky there, and Kat, who though she is Turbo, is another MMPR Ranger. It's not the best, but there's some really cool stuff in there. And like I said, it was cool to honor that legacy of the Tommy character's unique history. After that is Forever Red, which obviously is a much larger scale team up. As far as MMPR related stuff, you have basically Jason and Tommy. Of course, Tommy is returning as Zeo Ranger 5 Red, but he's obviously MMPR as well. And this had some pretty good MMPR related return content, in terms of catching up with Tommy and Jason, getting to see them in action again, getting to see them interact, giving this feeling of legacy. Also, this episode has a good feeling of that more interconnected vibe that the early Zordon era had. I almost wanted to rank Dimensions in Danger above this just because I thought some of the stuff for Dimensions in Danger was cooler in regards to returning MMPR content, because in this, in terms of just MMPR, you almost just had Jason acting like unusually cocky. But then I remembered this is actually pretty cool the way it incorporates Serpentera and kind of melds together some of the mythologies with, the Machine Empire remnant directing Serpentera. So it was kind of a cool way of taking advantage of MMPR's legacy and story, and it's probably a better overall episode, so it ranks a little bit higher. Then, maybe controversially putting this up because it's very different, but always a chance from In Space, which I think is very underrated. It's not a full-scale team-up or an anniversary, it's just Adam returning for a smaller, but in my opinion, a meaningful cameo, as it allows us to sit with Adam's character a little bit as he actually reflects on his time as a Ranger, and even wishing that maybe he could get back out there and be a Ranger again, which I think was a great moment. It was cool to see the broken version of the original coin, and him willing to risk his life by using it was one of the coolest moments, and it was really cool to see him mentor his successor, and passing on further knowledge. Again, it's a smaller cameo, but it's a meaningful one about Adam's legacy and his time as an MMPR Ranger. Plus, it was also just kind of cool that, he passed the mantle to Carlos as a Green Ranger, and now he's coming back to mentor him when they're both Black Rangers again. I don't know, it's overall, I think, one of the best, more meaningful MMPR cameos that isn't just, oh my god, explosions, and they stood next to each other. Then, Once a Ranger, which is my personal favorite overall team-up in terms of these. But for MMPR returns, you pretty much just have Adam, which I think was really well done. It kind of more stood out as an Adam tribute than an MMPR one with his own theme, which again, I appreciated. But it was really badass. I love Adam in this. I think he's really cool. It was one of the most exciting times to see an MMPR Ranger for me. Also, we did bring back Alpha, though. Technically, it was Alpha 6, which was neat. And they did just mention Angel Grove, they're in a warehouse and they're like, welcome to Angel Grove. I still got excited even though it was clearly just a warehouse and wherever. It was really cool though. Again, I know Thrax creates plot holes, but the very idea of him is really neat. You can easily write it up in a comic or something and come up with a cool explanation. But it was a really cool idea overall, and I really do enjoy this one. And again, it's my personal favorite, but I think there's some ones that are better in terms of MMPR returns. Speaking of, obviously, Once and Always ranks next above this, because even though I prefer Once a Ranger as an episode, this episode is specifically an MMPR tribute overall, and that's obviously why it ranks so high on the list. And you're probably thinking, Dawson, isn't this number one? Nope, there's one more. You might guess what it is, but obviously, because this is strictly tributing MMPR, it's one of the best MMPR returns. Does a great job of giving a tribute to the overall series, the original cast, the Yellow Ranger, putting Billy and Zach in the forefront, kind of modernizing it all. Obviously, I've talked about this special a lot in recent weeks, so you can check out any of those videos for more detailed thoughts. But for obvious reasons, it's why it's a good MMPR tribute. But my number one, personally, is Tommy's return for Dino Thunder. Now, I know that this is not a overall MMPR celebration like Once and Always was, and it's only one character. However, it was one character for an entire season. I know he was, kind of mandoed up with his helmet suit for, half of it because of, JDF wanting to go live in the US or whatever. That sounded like he wanted to move there. You know what I mean? I said that weird. The point is that this was just a little bit more meaningful because you had him for the whole season. And you got to do cool stuff like, the Weird Dream episode, which is another cool way of showcasing Tommy's unique legacy with so many mantles, but in kind of a more meaningful and deep way. I think they did a great job of showing some nostalgic elements with the clip shows and stuff and giving you those nostalgic moments, but it never felt like it leaned too hard on it. It felt like we were being supported by the legacy, but also moving forward. And I found this version of Tommy to be so meaningful because, in terms of MMPR, it was cool to see a mentor Ranger Ranger, but also one that we knew what he went through. So his advice and mentorship was all the more meaningful because we knew what he had experienced. And for me, this in general feels like MMPR The Next Generation, in the sense that I think in terms of tributing MMPR and those elements and homaging and all that type of stuff, Dino Thunder is that done right. All the other seasons are just trying to straight up be MMPR, whereas this is homaging it, paying respect to it, but moving forward with something different, and is about Tommy passing on the torch and the knowledge to new generation of characters. And I just thought for me it was the most meaningful MMPR return. Not to mention, outside of Bulk and Skull, or not Skull, basically Bulk, this was the only time we had a Legacy Ranger from MMPR return for a whole season. So I think because we got a whole season, getting to highlight his legacy and nostalgic moments, but also getting to see him mentor a new generation, it was the most meaningful and best MMPR return for me, even if it isn't homaging the whole show. But that is my list. I want to know what your guys' favorite MMPR returns in the series were. But until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you can get notifications for all my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.